and in stocks, money is control. So to prevent some random ass company from essentially buying out their anime, the production committee will take that foreign investment meant for one anime and instead of put it into 100, screwing literally every party over just to maintain their majority control. And what can the people who draw the anime do about this? Nothing. Because most of the time, they're not even on the committee. And even if they are, they don't have enough ownership to force the committee to raise more money. So they're put into a very pleasant position of having to make anime with pretty much no money. And they do make an anime because they signed a contract that says they have to. And once that anemically funded anime goes out, the production committee turns around and says, oh wow, you made this anime with no money? Clearly you're capable, so why don't we do it again? This is what the Sakurako Keionbu actually is. The production committee. Who doesn't value anime for your petty little reasons like laughs, tears, or childhood memories, but as a means to one single end, to make as much money as possible. But hold on a minute, let's not jump to conclusions here. Production committees are kind of scummy, but it's not like they're all evil mustache trolling villains. And unfortunately, the service they provide is kind of necessary. I mean, how many studios can you think of that can cough up the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars that it costs to just produce one episode of anime, let alone the millions it takes to produce an entire season? And don't forget, these anime that you watch, they're all a product of survivorship bias. These actually survived the process. Imagine the 90% of anime that get all this funding just to never be released, which would put studios into multiple millions of dollars of debt. These anime studios need money to survive, and the production committee does that for them, even if it's really shitty. They raise the money and allocate it to revenue stream. The anime, the merch, the t-shirts, the body pillows. It's just ironic that out of all of these streams of income, the least profitable part of it is the anime itself.
Hello everybody, my name is
How do you think YouTubers make money? Discounting all the merch, sponsorships, and all the other stuff. The main way any YouTuber makes money off YouTube itself is ads. Sorry about that. Advertisers want to make a lot of money by selling a lot of stuff to a lot of people, which means they'll pay more for ads to either reach a lot of people or the really rich people, or both, which is anime's issue. Because the time anime is aired on TV in Japan is not really conducive to advertisers, but the waking hours being taken up by shows that are aimed at an audience that usually doesn't have any money, and the shows that are actually aimed at people who have money are aired at a time when most of them are asleep, which means advertisers won't pay that much unless it's an uber popular anime like Demon Slayer. So if anime doesn't make that much money, then what does?
So I'm waiting in line to get the figures. I've gone to get the figures. This man in front of me literally just spent about $6 grand on $10,000.
$10,000.
$10,000.
$10,000.
Just like how Tezuka put his bets on the power of otaku, so do modern production committees, who invest the majority of their money not into making the anime, but getting the word out about the anime and making all the merch that anime fans gobble up, which through a strange turn of events has resulted in this. Do you notice something wrong? Why is this DVD so expensive? The price of anime DVDs have always looked kind of ridiculous to me. You want me to pay almost $50 for a part of a season of an anime that I can just watch online for free? I mean, through verified online streaming sites? And beyond that, people don't buy DVDs anymore. Right?
Sweet, because I have a lot. I have a few hundred.
Well, as it turns out, people still do. And in fact, anime DVDs are like this MacBook Pro stand, a luxury item, overpriced because the profit made from the people buying is enough to outweigh all the lost profit from the people who don't. In fact, in the good old days, anime DVDs used to make so much profit that it's propped up entire studios before. Spoiler alert, those good old days are over. Because nowadays, most anime is watched through streaming services like Crunchyroll and Netflix, so the committee requires pay a few $1,000s minimum per anime episode in an attempt to recoup production costs. An attempt that's usually completely hopeless. Because did I mention that anime is getting so expensive that entire production committees are going into debt? Which lends itself to the unfortunate realization that, yeah, your life is probably worth less than Orimo or El Manga Sensei is worth to the production committee. Because just like the money raised for anime came through them first, the money profited from anime goes to the committee first as well. Because they are the ones that technically own the anime. Because anime is a stock, and only the owners of that stock get to reap the profit of it. Besides, the creators involved in the project already got paid up front, not our problem if they went over budget. Which means even if an anime is a big hit, sometimes the anime studio doesn't get a single penny. Knowing all this would explain why, even though the anime production industry has been collapsing inwards for a few years, anime and the anime distribution industry have reached all-time highs because they're either paid on their own terms or through being on the production committee, not starved of money and also getting the profits last, which makes anime studios mass outsourcing work to lower wage countries like China or the Philippines seem a lot more reasonable. Well, it would be more reasonable if it made everyone's life easier, but it doesn't. Because now with workers spread out all over the world, it becomes increasingly more difficult to coordinate this ginormous border-transcending system to match the week-on-week deadlines that someone decided the anime industry should move at. Because at the end of the day, give a studio all the money they want, but it's never gonna matter if the anime just never comes out. The final season of Attack on Titan is kind of a joke. Delays on top of delays have turned the finale of Isayama's story into perhaps the only real-life example of an infinite fractal. And for a series where the final season was handed off from the incumbent WIT Studios to Mappa solely because WIT was having some behind-the-scenes chaos, it's just, how? No, like, I'm serious, how? How do anime studios, who outsource work in these massive amounts, have these kinds of production issues? Especially when the employees are working so many hours that it's being compared to literal slavery. Well, let me ask you a question. If you were a freelance animator working on some no-name anime, would you keep working at these amazing wage rates? What about like twice over? Thrice over? How about 10 times over? No, I'm being completely serious. Not only is VA and sound work done before the animation is completed, meaning studios have to rush out a rough draft for the VAs before then going back and then remaking everything for real, if you look closer at the production system chart that was somehow legibly translated from a 240p picture, you'll realize that the vast majority of the blocks here are literally just checking if things are done right and then redoing them over and over again. Which, even though it works, pisses off literally everyone involved in making an anime. Whether it's the higher-ups, the entry-level workers, the production committee, or even the audience. Forced to watch as the system hemorrhages time away as it's stuck looping the same track over and over and over again, creating an uncontrollable crisis that forces more and more employees to work longer and longer hours to make up for all the time wasted away, until inevitably someone, somewhere, reaches their breaking point. In 2019, a Madhouse employee sued the company after working nearly 400 hours of unpaid overtime in 1 month, doing the very important job of coordinating this ginormous mess. After having to drive around all night and day in a company car delivering materials to studio employees, the consequences of this broken system finally caused him to collapse on the street as he returned home at 7 a.m. But come on, is it really that surprising? I mean, the most obvious consequence of having such a huge production system is that there are so many points of failure. One delay, anywhere. Whether it's because the director overslept, the animator got an injury, or some outsourced person is late on delivery, one delay cascades down the entire system, causing everything behind it to get even further behind. The worst part is, the anime industry kind of brought this one on themselves too. With nearly every studio being in Tokyo and pay rates being not so great, many employees are forced to work on multiple jobs, in multiple projects, sometimes in multiple companies. This set of circumstances means that every single time an anime upload deadline rolls around, that there's an ungodly crunch hour, where employees are trying to make up for so much lost time that they can't eat, or sleep, or even go home. Because it's not like episodes are worked on one by one, they're worked on in batches of 3 or 4, which means if a delay happens, it's not just merely one episode off schedule, it's a third of the season. With all this pressure and chaos coming down on employees, who are most of the time just blameless victims, some people will stay up nights to make those deadlines, while others, understandably, are done with this bullshit and decide to just disappear in the middle of the production process, making everything worse. And almost all of them will wish that this system was different. That they, the government, or something will come in and fix this abomination of a system that exploits their passions and dreams to basically voluntarily enslave them. But at the end of the day, all of that is merely just a pipe dream, because the struggle to make anime a good place to work has been fought for decades upon decades by some of the most venerable names in Japanese history, and near nothing has changed. Because while our story may have started with The Promised Neverland, the true story stretches far into the past, almost 100 years back to modern anime's birth, when one war ended and another began. When America occupied Japan at the end of the Second World War, they restructured everything about the country. And that included a concept that most Japanese had never heard of before: collective bargaining. And I mean, it's not too hard to see why labor unions were kind of foreign to the Japanese. In a country where harmony and the respect to hierarchy was the norm for like a lot of years, a ragtag group of subordinate employees getting together and demanding something from their boss was something people just would not do. Inevitably though, the concept began to see adoption, and in 1961, anime's first labor union was formed, the Toei Animation Labor Union. Remember Toei? And to be fair to the union, they actually did quite a lot. Founded by people involved in the production of Lupin III, and eventually coming to involve a very impassioned chief secretary by the name of Hayao Miyazaki, the union fought tooth and nail, winning concession after concession after concession, but they were on borrowed time. Toei had already started hiring out domestic freelancers in place of permanent employees, making unionization more difficult. 2 years later, Tezuka propped up this weekly upload norm, and then anime started to get really expensive, to the point where, by the time the 70s rolled around, Toei, along with some other anime studios, were hundreds of millions of yen in debt, and Toei decided to conveniently solve the problem by just nuking half of its workforce. As you'd expect, people were pissed. And while the union would fight a 2-year court battle that would recapture 18 of 170 layoffs, 150 of those people, whether laid off or not, permanently left, including 2 friends who went on to establish a studio called Ghibli. After this, the situation only got worse. With anime expenses getting higher and higher, a studio called Sunrise would pioneer the concept of international outsourcing when it produced Mobile Suit Gundam. And as more and more of the industry turned into independent contractors now scattered all across the world, union organization became more and more untenable. And as production committees and the horrible working conditions of the modern anime industry began to solidify, the first generation of animators decided to try one more time to save what they loved so dearly, aimed at appealing the one actor that had more power than the companies did: the government.
全国民を代表する皆さんと一堂に会する
To be clear, J-Anika, a union founded by old people like Toyo Ashida and Satoshi Kon, was initially just aiming for guaranteeing retirement benefits, nothing more. But as the years rolled on and the working conditions of the anime industry were leaked to the Japanese public, the union gathered more and more members that weren't as old, and eventually became the spearhead of the anime unionization effort, winning a number of things it set out to do, including getting the support of the government of Japan. Unfortunately, that government didn't stay in power for long, and Janika's proposals were cancelled, being cited as a waste of taxpayers' money. And while Janika would continue its efforts valiantly, it had reached its peak. Infighting and an unsupportive government doomed any future efforts. The union's last stand would come with a project that translates to anime's future. Proposed to the Department of Cultural Affairs, the entire project's premise was that if you paid people more, more people would want to come and work. Come on, guys. Really? But for one reason or another, Anime Mirai didn't prove to be successful enough to continue, and the entire program was given to the Japanese Animation Association, a group of 38 of the biggest animation companies in Japan, who coincidentally decided to switch the premise of the program. The anime industry now reaching 90 years old, and Janika's original founder now dead, most of the old guard took their leave. With nothing to show but blood and defeat in a war that lasted nearly a century. The men and women that had built and fought for anime. Their love. Their life. Their legacy.
今の人類の夢っていうのはみんな呪われてますよ、どっかで。
Finally gave up.
あのね、映画の本当に素晴らしいのかどうかわからないじゃない。
全部私だけじゃない。あやこれ好き。
呪われた夢なんですよ。本当にきちんと考えたら映画が好きだったのはただのそういう趣味でしょっていう。金を稼ぎたいとかそういうのは全部論外。有名になりたいとも論外。そんなクソくらいでそういうことじゃない。かつてそういう映画が作られたことがあったかもしれない。今も映画の価値があるわけじゃない。多くはくだらないんです、僕らの世界は。難しい。
Gonna be honest with you, this next part of the video is kind of dangerous. Dangerous because, well, the anime we know and love is gone. Because it's not just some girls running around on a screen anymore. It's a $28 billion system that controls hundreds of thousands of real lives, and whose influence has reached hundreds of millions more. So when we talk about fixing it, we're talking about fighting politics, multi-billion-dollar companies, and centuries-old traditions, which, I mean, at the end of the day, that just sounds like we're gonna need a lot more people. Luckily for us, it's not like this hasn't happened before. 4 years before Tezuka would make his debut, his role model Walt Disney